podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Or gals. Hi.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. I can hear the subway in the background sometimes
Oh, yes. In my base. I'm in like the basement here. Yes. It's kind of funny.
It's so funny. The big city, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the fall.
Fall is good.
Yeah.
Okay. This is one of my sad things is that in Winnipeg every fall, this restaurant, I'm from Winnipeg, they have a restaurant called Sergeant Sundays. It's an ice cream place and they make their own pumpkin pie ice cream like from scratch. And it's just like the best thing. And I'm not having it this year. And I'm very sad about that.
I mean, you can get your parents to mail some.
Yeah, right.
Even if it's liquid, it would like maybe taste the same.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Sure.
I know. I'm trying to be creative.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
I appreciate you trying to alleviate my suffering here.
You're welcome.
Right.
Yeah, you're
Uh-huh.
welcome. Yeah, this is actually good because we met in Winnipeg, so I know the place
This is
that
true.
you are talking about.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
like the best. It's true.
That's true.
Well, that's actually like, okay, how did we meet each other? Let's share that because I think that so Erin and I met in Winnipeg. Erin, you were working for the diocese. You were like the youth ministry director, or I'm not
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministry for the Archdiocese.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like 2010, I think, that I went there.
Right.
2009, 2010, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So I got to meet you there, and
That's
your
true.
lovely family.
That's right. I remember Erin thinking that you were really cool, and I was like, "Oh, I want to be friends with Erin." But I thought you were too cool for me. I thought you were like, "Oh, Nicole's just this young person." I had like made all this stuff up in my head about how you didn't like me and stuff.
Oh
But I
my
secretly
gosh.
always wanted to be friends with you. I know I never told you that
That's
before, but it's
hilarious.
true. And then
That's
like
so
moved to
funny.
Toronto, and you were the one person I knew, and then now we're friends, and I'm just like, "Oh, that's great."
So great. I know. I was so excited when I heard that you were coming here because it's just fun. Like, you're wonderful and your
Aw.
family is wonderful. And it's just like, yeah, I was so excited. And I always thought that you were cool enough for me. Just
Aw, this is like
to
healing my
clear the
heart.
air.
Wow.
oh my gosh,
I've
that's
honestly
so
believed
funny.
this for so long. Anyways, all right. Erin and Rachel, so how did you meet?
Through Newman, basically, or
Mhm.
through my sister, actually, through my sister Trisha,
Okay.
who was a
Yeah.
U of T student, because I was not a U of T student when we met. So that's when we met. And my first memory of Erin is like, I think Erin wouldn't even remember because she was like, we were getting ready. It was at a Rise Up for like the banquet, shout out CCO. And I just remember being like, oh, that's Erin, because I knew of her as like through my sister as like the, working campus ministry. at U of
Campus
T. So I was
ministry,
like,
yeah.
oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I,
Yeah.
at that point, was delusional. Any point that is more than one day into any kind of ministry thing, you
Fair. Yeah.
track of what's actually real in the world around you. So
100%.
but I remember so I've been at Newman. By the time people watch this, I will have just left the role at Newman, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point, but yeah, been here for 7 years. And then we had some classes together,
Oh yeah, we did. We did
Masters.
Christology together.
Mhm. It was
That
really
was
great.
fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
Such a good class.
And then the three of us plus our secret backer,
Our secret friend.
our secret
Yeah.
friend, secret
Sounds
prayer
scary,
buddy.
but-
Yeah, that's right. We had the Exodus 90 group together.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
And
Which
that's
is a
where
great
Nicole and I
program.
met.
And
Mhm.
men for men. Sorry, Exodus 90. Shout out to Exodus 90 because they're great. And we were like, hey, we're
Yes.
women and we want to do this. So we like did it.
Yeah.
Did a bit.
With
Stuff.
the
Anyways.
cold showers and the
Oh
Yeah,
boy.
right.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
that was-
That universally, that's the worst part. I feel like, or the hardest
Yeah.
thing. Like anyone who's done it, it's like,
Absolutely.
the cold showers. They're just, especially if you live in Canada. I feel like it's even
Yeah,
like if you do it, no, it's so
Yeah.
hard.
It's good.
Especially if
It's
you're
good.
doing it not in the summer. Like, it was fine in
Exactly.
the summer. The apartment that I was in at the time was like 80 million degrees because it had no air conditioning
Right.
and heat wave. So the cold showers were like,
They were nice.
Refreshing.
oh,
Good.
totally, 100%. But then
Right.
as soon as it started getting colder, I was like, this is
There's something wrong. This feels wrong.
that's right. Yeah,
But
totally.
it's good.
Mhm. Yeah,
Oh, that's
exactly.
good.
Mm.
Well, so today, so we want to talk about fear and suffering today, which is something that's really that I've been thinking about a lot this year. Kind of had this experience in January when I was at Rise Up again. Rise Up again come up twice already in this conversation. Yay, CCO.
Shout out CCO.
But where we watched this video in a women's session about this woman who was stepping out of fear, and she was singing, and anyways, I remember watching this video and just bawling my face off, and the girls around me got concerned, and they're like, "Oh, what's happening? She's having this really profound moment," and I was, but also I cry a lot all the time. So, anyways, but it was this moment where I felt like God was calling me to saying, "Hey, you have a lot more fear in your life, and you kind of live in fear a lot, and I want to free you from that. So let's get to work," kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I've been on this. I feel like I've been on this journey this year. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to talk about this. Mm-hmm. We're talking about fear, the kind of the fear that where you get stuck, and you feel like there's these lies and phantoms, and when you actually talk about the stuff you're afraid of, you're like, wait, is this even real? And you're worried, and you're don't want to get out of bed, and those kinds of things. We're not necessarily talking about the kind of fear where it's you see a bear and your body goes into fight or flight mode, so you can either fight the bear or run away. That's an adaptive, healthy response. Yeah. I don't think we're also talking about clinical anxiety disorders. Which fear is related. We're not really necessarily addressing that directly, right? But more of this sort of nebulous, this fear that's well, we'll talk about what that is. So maybe we can start. How have you guys experienced that kind of fear in your own lives? What does that look like, when you're suffering and there's fear? What is that for you guys?
Yeah. I think when you're talking, it's exactly that. I'm thinking, okay, where is there fear that is based on the truth, and where is there fear that's based on the lie in my life? Where is it good fear that is alerting me to something good that is in danger or something that. So I'm trying not to think about those things. And then, okay, where am I experiencing fear that's really based on a lie? And I think that for me, the thing that comes immediately to mind was this experience last year, which I talked a little bit about in kind of our launch in October. That is related to the suffering that I've kind of experienced with fibromyalgia. So basically the short story of that is getting this diagnosis. And then I experienced this flare last year. And in that, I think it really brought up a lot of things that I've struggled with for a while about this fear of being unlovable. So I fear that I am a burden to other people. I fear that in the bigness of my personality, because I am gregarious and obviously hilarious, but sometimes maybe it's too much for people, sometimes they can't handle the laughs that are coming their way. But I mean, you know what I mean, right? It's
sure, it's we all have personality. Oh my gosh, and I love you, Erin. You're wonderful, and that. But I understand the thing of it's we all have our unique personalities, right? But that there's aspects of that where we're oh, am I too much for people, or am I not enough, or whatever it is, those insecurities that come from that.
And it's both for me. So this fear of being unlovable relates to an experience that I had a while ago with somebody in kind of the vocational discernment thing. Where there's this lie planted that that there's something fundamentally wrong with me and that I'm unlovable. And so then kind of all of this stuff, God has brought so much healing to that, but even I feel there were echoes that were coming up of that lie when I started experiencing this kind of pain and suffering. And this is the first real flare last year that I had been dealing with. So I didn't know how to deal with it. I was feeling pain all the time. Plus there was a lot of other stuff going on in my life. And also because the other thing, definitely another thing that is all kind of has been in my relationship with the Lord for a long time is the sense of that I need to be doing good things to be a good Christian, to be worthy of love, to be, right? So having that totally stripped away to the point where there were some days where I could not pray and actually could only watch Netflix all day, because if I didn't watch Netflix all day, I would have stewed in a pit of my own thoughts because I couldn't,
Yeah.
you know, like I just
Yep.
needed something to distract me. So
I've been there. Yeah.
yeah. So like in that, there was that kind of experience of that like wound of seeing that I'm unlovable, or that my pain now is too much for people, that I don't want to burden people with that. Like, so seeing myself as a burden to be born and not a gift to be loved, like that fear about like who I am to other people, and not even so much to the Lord, but like who I am to other people, you know? And so then even now I feel this fall, I've been kind of heading back into flare territory, and I'm trying to like do as much as I can to prevent that. But man, have I felt that fear knocking at the door this whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
Because God brought so much good out of that in terms of healing places in me that were feeling like I was loved because of what I can do. But even still, it's like, even if he's brought some healing to it, like it's still like that
more layers.
knocking. Yeah, there's more layers, and it just kind of keeps coming and knocking at the door still, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of another podcast I was listening to, and gosh, I'm trying to remember what one was. I don't remember. But they were talking about how there's like 7 basic fears, like things that we're afraid of. And it's often like from childhood wounds or just stuff, you know, but it's like, fears of being abandoned or being rejected or whatever. And I remember listening to that list, and there were certain of them I was like, yeah, no. And then like, oh yeah, that's one of mine, you know? And I'm just like, it's interesting how there can be these different like threads of specific things that we're afraid of, but then that kind of they sneak into a bunch of different areas, like you're saying, you're related to illness or related to personality or stuff, like it's like, but it's the same kind of specific fear that's based on this lie about who you are, like your identity, you know? It's like, I like resonate with that too, you know, of like in my own stuff. I
think also that like there can be a fear sometimes of in that fear of not enough, a fear of being destroyed by whatever it is that you have to face. Like that's like a fear that I have, that like if I go through this, you know, like it's even like imposter syndrome can sometimes be a fear like that. Like if I do this and I mess up, they're going to know who I really am. And then, you know, and then you imagine like basically destruction. Like I'm going to be kicked out of my job. I'm going to be broken up with. I'm going to be whatever it might be, like in a relationship or in life. And I feel like that fear can be such a cage, because we're like afraid to embrace sort of the reality that God has blessed us with in that time to its to its fullness, because we're like walking on eggshells trying to avoid encountering something hard that we think is going to destroy us, or to avoid messing up so that we don't have to face the pain of like of those fears, you know?
Because sometimes to have healing from a fear that's coming from a place of woundedness and lie and whatever, we have to kind of face that wound again. We have to kind of go to that place, you know, and I'm a huge fan of like counseling, and because I think you're right. I think that there's like that fear of like, oh, I'm going to face this thing and it's going to destroy me. It's going to crush me. Like I've had experiences like where there's been something like something really difficult, and I've just been like, okay, I can't deal with this right now. I can't. And so you kind of put it as you kind of compartmentalize whatever, but then something happens and you end up facing it or encountering it. And it's like emotion Pandora's box kind of thing, right? I think that's like a real thing. And so then it's like, okay, there's a prudence to that of like, okay, I want to face this and it feels like the right time, but I'm going to do it in a space that's safe and where there's someone who can walk with me, you know, like a good counselor. Because I think that's like real, you know, that's like,
I think like it makes me think about, I mean, some of the coping strategies that we use are things like that. Like, for me, I think one of the things would be control, you know, like if I can, I don't know, control these interactions or like this portion of my life or how I look in this way or how I'm presented in this way or whatever, then I can somehow avoid suffering or I can somehow avoid pain. But really like, this was something else good that came out of this experience last year, was just a sense of like, I can control nothing. I can control, like honestly, sometimes I can't even control my own response to things. Like,
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
Totally.
Yeah, but like that
And there's a
issue,
freedom, I think, saying that.
yeah,
Like just you saying that feels like, yeah, that's true.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the, like, even the tendency of, because we're talking about even two different aspects of fear, right? Like there's a fear of suffering, of, you know,
Yeah.
and then there's also a fear that is suffering. Like
Yeah.
this fear that we have of various things or whatever that is a suffering for us.
In
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Right.
And even
Yeah,
like,
because like,
yeah,
sorry, because I think suffering is not avoidable in this life,
yeah,
you know? And like, I think we've talked about this sometimes of like maybe the fear of suffering and the fear of pain. There's something in that that's like we recognize that we're made for more than this. Like we recognize that like there's something wrong with us. I'm not supposed to suffer, you know? And it's like, yeah, in the original plan, like before the fall of Adam and Eve, like we weren't supposed to suffer. And in heaven, like this place, that's what it's like, no tears, no crying, no pain, right? So there's like we're made for more than this. But this is the reality right now. Like there is suffering, so we can't avoid that. But I don't think, like, you know, we don't have to be afraid. Like this is where I feel like the Lord has been teaching me is like in like all these scriptures where like God, you know, in scriptures all over the place, like, be not afraid, do not be afraid. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Like it's this command, like saying like, so if he commands us to do it, it must not be impossible. So the fear part that makes the suffering more complex, and I think that exacerbates it sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't think we don't have to be afraid, but it's really hard not to be, you know. And you know, I think for me, it's often a thing of like, I'm afraid of making choices. Often, I'm afraid to make a choice that will cause, like, I often my choices, I'm like, okay, which of my choices is going to cause me the least amount of pain and suffering, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And if I don't know, if I'm making a choice where there's a lot of unknowns, I feel paralyzed. Like I'm just like, I'm like, I want to know what I'm in for, but you can't know, right? So it's this fear of the unknown. I don't know, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle all of these things. And then I get stuck in the same, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And there might be, you know, in vocational discernment or things like that. And you're imagining like, well, what if, like, there's so many what ifs because like, yeah, life is unpredictable.
yeah.
Even that's hard, you know?
Yeah, it is. Like, and getting stuck in, like the phrase, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. Like, like sometimes that's such a real, possibility is that even if we're in a place of fear or suffering, because either the path out of it or what would come if we were to enter into those places where we're suffering or where we're dealing with fears or where we're dealing with woundedness or things like that are so unknown, and that it's hard to see. Like we can't even imagine life after going through that it's like we get content with just sitting in whatever suffering we're in and just like somehow dealing with it, or like thinking that somehow it's outside of, like, for me, for everybody else maybe they can experience a greater freedom, but for me this is, you know, like, no, I can't, you know.
Yeah, man, I really resonate with that. I feel like there are parts of ourselves sometimes that we don't even know we've made a choice, especially if you've like suffered like a real trauma in your life. That's, I know everyone's like, you know, but like a trauma that can be like categorized in a sense, like as like, okay, this is like an objectively very, very traumatic thing that can happen to someone. I feel like when that kind of stuff happens, and we hear about that, right? Like people literally like your brain just like squashes it down somewhere, and like you make choices without even knowing that are protecting you from confronting that thing that happened to you. Right. And I feel like on some small, like on some scaled level, we all do that. Like there may be choices that we make that we literally don't even know we're making out of fear. And it's in God's wisdom. He reveals that to us sometimes, and we're like, whoa, okay, I didn't even know that. I have to
and sometimes those choices are adaptive things. Like sometimes to get through a really hard thing, it's like your brain and your body knows that, okay, I can't deal with this right now because I have to focus on survival. And you kind of, you know, and that actually does allow you to survive. But then if you get to that safer place, or a place where you can now start to process it, and you start to realize, oh my gosh, like, okay, this choice that I made, this way that my body and my neurological system reacted way back, I don't need to be in this place of fear anymore. but I don't know how to get out of it because this has been how I've lived my life, right? So I think those are real things too. That's like tragic, but I think the healing is possible. But then that is like, you know, what you're talking about. I had a counseling session a couple of weeks ago, and I remember being very nervous before it because I wanted to talk about this particular area of in my life, but I was like, if we work through this, I don't know what it looks like I don't know what this new place will look like. And I'm afraid of that, but I want the freedom because I think it's there, but there was this fear to like, of just all of those unknowns, right? Like, yeah, it's interesting.
Even how good we are, like, even when you're talking about like counseling or like we're just thinking about kind of the communal aspect of what it means to be part of the body of Christ or just a human being in general, is that like I am very good at convincing myself of things. Like I'm very good at convincing myself of like, you know, even about conversations that you have with people or that you know you need to have that are difficult conversations or things you need to deal with, and then you run the scenarios in your head and then convince yourself that this is the response this person is going to have or that this is how something is going to go.
Oh my gosh.
Talk to somebody else and they're like, no, dummy, like that's never gonna like Nicole did that for me last week with the conversation. Like, well, maybe
this isn't
maybe. And then I was like so grateful for just even that little reminder of that things might not go exactly how I thought they were gonna go. Was like so huge, you know?
Yeah, right.
The other thing I was just thinking when you were saying that, Erin, like I feel like sometimes the way to combat it, or like the way that I can face it is with somebody else, just being like, look, that's like, because sometimes you just need objectivity. It's so sometimes fear, and this is a tactic of the devil, I think, like he amplifies things, right? Like in your mind and in your experience, and you're like, oh my gosh, and your view of reality is so distorted. Someone to be like, no, that's not like this person loves you, or like, because even sometimes people who love you, you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't say this to them, or I can't, because you're like, they're, you know, and you know, you need someone to be like, no, the person loves you, or this is the worst thing that could happen out of this situation, not that, like you went, it's not even a possibility in this situation if you were to see it from the outside. And I feel like that's so helpful. So that's one thing I think about fear too, is like bringing it to the light in a place, like you were saying, Paul, that is safe, like in a relationship that you can trust that person, or, you know, and, but then it's so important to surround yourself by people like that, who can see a bit more clearly in those situations than you can.
And ideally to have multiple people too, because I think if it's all one person who's like, it's wonderful if you have somebody who's willing, and I have people like that in my life who are willing to sit with me in the fears, and I'm like, I'm incredibly grateful for that, because I think that that's not an easy thing to do as well. You know, and I think that that's a loving thing to do, is to be able to have, like you're saying, like a team of people. Like if worrying and fear is something that you struggle with, like find your team of, you know, but
it's even,
but I think
to risk, you know, like, because there's risk in love, or like part of the reason that we fear or that we have these fears is not because we have experienced God hurting us in a sense, but it's because our relationships with other people have introduced pain into our lives. And so because of those relationships, it's like, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, you know? It's like one thing, like the lies of the evil one will keep us in these places of isolation, because, you know, there's the life, nobody's going to understand this, or or just all of those kind of things that keep us separated. But then also there's the other edge of the sword, which is true, that we may not be received well in our suffering, like or in our, you know, and it might be that somebody looks at us and is like, you are the dummy that you think you are, like, and then like so it is hard.
It is hard.
I think that like I can relate to this kind of reality that something happens to you that is a distortion of the truth, like somebody else acts in a way that is a distortion of what is good. Right. And that's sin, right? Like that we all hurt each other that way. And when that happens, sometimes it can be so foundational to you that becomes your understanding of reality. So like,
Yes.
and so I kind of like, when you were saying that, Erin, I was thinking about that, like something real can happen that actually happened. And now your whole view of reality is colored by that thing when it's not actually the truth in general, but it was true specifically to you in that situation. And so then you need like really healing from God to like heal from that experience, to be actually open to the fact that reality can be different than that, you know?
I think that's why it's so, like, if we're talking about a fear of suffering or a suffering that's fear, like whatever you want to talk about it, that's I think one of the things that I feel like I'm kind of continually asking the Lord for now is if we have the freedom to suffer well, like if the fear of other people hurting us is no longer a fear, like if the Lord gives us freedom to suffer, like that suffering is not something that we're running from or that we are having fear about. Like if there's more free, then it doesn't matter. Like I can share myself, I can share a fear, I can be wounded and know like that I don't actually have to be afraid of that, because the pain that's there is not turning me in on myself, or like there's just a freedom. If we are not afraid of suffering, like we have freedom in that, then what do we have to be afraid of? Like, imagine like the freedom to act and to say and to love without worrying about whether other people are going to hurt us or not, or receive us or not, or whether like,
that's so good.
I just am longing for it, you know?
Yeah, totally. I think and that's like so much of what we're going to be talking about in other episodes as well. Like, I think fear and healing are so linked. Like we sometimes think that like fear, the way to get over it is like grit your teeth and bear it and just like go for it. But like sometimes it's a wound that we just need Jesus to heal us from. And the deeper we go, and that's kind of like, you know, the whole perfect love casts out all fear and whatever. So what is the calling there is like to dive deeper into the love of God for us.
Yeah, right.
Actually healing, and then it gives us the courage to suffer the way that he he can help us to do. So
I always, whenever you know that the verse perfect love casts out all fear is so beautiful, and then it turns out that like actually in our brains fear and love they can't happen at the same time. So if you're in love in your brain, it deactivates all of the fear pathways. I think it's so cool. You know, it's like a beautiful thing.
Well, and Paul, I mean, begged the Lord 3 times that, you know, this thorn from his side might leave him. And the Lord says, my grace is sufficient for you. Like, it's not even, like also a freedom of being able to be okay with it if the Lord chooses not to grant us full healing in something, because to be in it is somehow like to be able to love or to have peace in that or to whatever is like somehow for his greater glory than
that abandonment. What do you like? I mean, this brings us to a good thing. What practically speaking, like what do you guys do? Like what's helpful for you in terms of like facing these fears and like I guess putting ourselves in a place of receptivity and openness to the healing that God wants us to offer? Like what works for you guys? I mean these might not be things that work for everyone, but like, you know, what do you do?
My answer to that question is kind of linked to what you just said to Erin about like sometimes like we're praying for a certain kind of healing or whatever, and it may not come in that way. And I feel like part of it for me is in going to the Lord, in diving deeper into that perfect love that is God, I can just be super real with him and be like, Lord, this sucks. Like, I hate this. And like, it sounds like, you know, I feel like it's so important for me, my relationship with God, to be able to do that, because sometimes literally just having that kind of conversation with him lets me breathe, or like gives me relief, or just gives me strength, like because I feel like he deals with me, like the actual me then, because that's the thing, like I feel like, okay, if I have to be okay with the fact that this is happening, then do I just have to like, you know, like grin it, you know, I feel like I have to be a false person in my prayer life with God. And that never works for me. So I feel like one of the things that freed me up so much was just to be able to go to the Lord and be, in a way, my ugly self, and just be like, this really sucks and I hate it. And what are you even thinking? Which is totally, I mean, you know, I know he knows what he's doing.
So good.
But like, I need to say that to him sometimes just for, and he gets it, he can handle it. So that's a huge help for me. And then I'll just like throw in there too, I've been reading a really great book by Dr. Greg Bottaro, who is a Catholic psychologist. It's called Catholic Mindfulness, which I know sometimes is like a really big buzzword for like Eastern, you know, maybe Eastern practices and things like that. But for him, it's like very much like psychology that he's like integrating with the faith to help us know like we are body, mind, soul, like integrated beings, and we're not all these separate things. So you can do things to help with stuff like physiological anxiety or stuff like that, you know, I can struggle with sometimes. It's not like a prescriptive thing, but it's just been a very interesting book for me, and I found it really helpful. So
that's
cool.
That's awesome. I think for me, there are a couple of things, like even related to what you were saying, Rachel. One is just understanding that I heal not quickly. like that's okay with the Lord, you know, like, because sometimes, I mean, I don't know, I'm such a, like, I tend to be a perfectionist, or like I can do things very well. Like there are a lot of things that I can do really well. And so then when there's something that I can't do really well and that I can't do of my own volition, it ticks me off because I like to be able to do it. So like, I like to orchestrate my own healing the way I like and whatever. So, so I think that that's helpful for me, is to like recall that the Lord loves me no less in my like, I don't know, messiness or rebellion, or like however long it takes me to, however long it takes him to do what he's doing in me. Like it's good for me to actually remember that. But one of the things that I found is really helpful for that is I painted actually, like a little thing, and it says, Jesus, help me to surrender. It does not say, Jesus, I surrender. Because I don't surrender.
It's honest. Yeah, that's good.
So I'm like, so it was like, it kind of like exactly what you're saying, you know, like being totally honest with the Lord, and like, I desire to surrender. Like I want to be free of these fears and all of those kind of things. But so I hung it above my bed, at the foot of my bed. So it is the first thing that I see when I wake up in the morning. It is the last thing I see when I go to bed at night. And so like on the days where I have not, you know, prayed as I ought, or where I have, you know, just even been willfully lazy in things, or like those kind of things, it's just like giving that to the Lord, so that the fears that I'm unlovable are not able to take as great a hold in me.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Because I really like, think that's really sticking in my mind, and that kind of relates to what I feel like the Lord has been teaching me about fear and stuff, is kind of what you were saying, Erin, to be freed, so that you're like, okay, you know what, whatever happens, whatever suffering I have to go through, like God's will be done, like, and being open to that. Because then if you're not, if it's all okay, then we have nothing to be afraid of, you know? So I think for me, it's this thing of like, I have all kinds of like desires in my heart that I think are good desires. And I want them to happen, but it's like, I want them to happen on my terms and in my timeline. So something that I did is, this has come up in a few things where it's like, okay, fear just comes from a lack of trust that God is really going to give you the desires of your heart, and that he's really looking out for you, or something like that. So like this thing of like abandonment. So I was praying the rosary, this is a while back, and I was like, okay, for every decade of the rosary, like while I'm meditating, like I'm going to offer this intention of like abandoning this certain desire. Like, okay, I have a desire for this. Okay, God, I abandon that desire to you. Like, I just give that to you. And like doing that with each decade of the rosary. And it was a really powerful thing for me. So yeah, just like, and then trying to practice that in my daily life when it's like, when I'm afraid if there's some sort of fear that I'm encountering, and like, gosh, I do not do this very well, to be honest. And sometimes like, it's really hard. And then that's when I need my team of people to be like, okay, I'm stuck, you know, and they can help me. But what I want to be able to do is to like, when I'm having something that I'm afraid of and I'm getting stuck, to be like, okay, God, I think this is the desire that I'm afraid won't be met. So I'm going to abandon that desire to you. and just trust that you're going to do, and that the things that I desire and the things that I want, like God might have a bigger and better plan. So just to be open that my conception of what reality is and my conception of what reality ought to be might actually be too limited. And I need to abandon all of that and get rid of that and just be open to be like, okay, what do you want, Lord? Like, where are you, you know, but like, gosh, that's easier said than done, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But, you know, yeah.
Yep.
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That was a lot of stuff. That's great that we
Totally.
talked about.
Good.
Yeah.
I love how smart we are. I just love how. Just kidding. Sorry.
Well, I feel like it's like scratching the surface of all this stuff.
I
I
know,
could talk
right?
about fear forever, you know? Anyways.
Yep.
So what are your God weeks? What are
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Okay, I can share it because there was one.
Yeah.
It's not even. It's like so little, but it was just I don't know. It was so cool. So I got these like 2 books for a work thing that that Father had asked me to order because we're going to do this Divine Mercy Friday thing or whatever. And I ordered them during the pandemic stuff, and then they came, and then I couldn't find them, and I was like, oh no, where are these things? And I checked my apartment downstairs, and I had cleaned, you know, my whole office, and they weren't here. And I was, so then anyways, it was like adoration. I'm sitting in the chapel, and I'm like, please, Lord, just find them. And then I just felt him saying, like, check your bookshelf. And it's not that often that he's that specific about things with me of like, you need to walk down this street and then like, anyways. So I was like, all right, I'm going to check but I didn't kind of quite believe it, you know, like that.
Yeah.
Really? Anyways, I checked my bookshelf, both of them right there. Like
Nice.
I just cleaned my bookshelf 2 days ago. And so it's
That's
kind of like one
awesome.
of those moments where I was like, okay, like sometimes he'll do things like that just to remind me that I actually hear him. Like, that
Yeah.
I actually,
Like he's real.
like that
Yeah.
he's real.
That's the
that
nice
he's
thing about
listening.
God, is that God's real.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So that was good.
Awesome.
That's cool.
For mine, I was just thinking like so I just transitioned out of a role, an amazing experience of being campus minister at McMaster in order to do full-time study. But I was able to be with the students again, just as a guest a couple days ago, and share some things with them. And so if any of them are listening, they've already heard this a little bit, but it's about the Raptors because I love basketball and I love watching.
I am going to share with you all a picture
No!
of Rachel
Oh, no.
watching basketball
So bad.
when the Raptors won the champion. It's so good.
Okay, I haven't seen this. I want to see it.
You haven't seen it? Well, okay. Yeah, you're going to see it. And it's not going to bless your life very much because it's real ugly. It's a
No,
I'll
real
be the
it's
judge of
beautiful.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
but yeah, so I do really love watching basketball, and obviously for anyone else who loves that, we're, almost at the finals. So anyways, the Raptors this year, their team was a very specific iteration where we didn't have Kawhi, and people didn't really believe that they could go very far, and they just were there was messiness and they messed up a whole lot, but the attitude of that team, the way that they went through it, it was like God was evangelizing me through them. I was watching them, listening to their interviews, and I was I literally wrote in my prayer journal some of the things that Kyle Lowry said in an interview, and I was this is so good for my spiritual. It was crazy. And so sometimes I'm just God literally uses anything. He uses
That's so great
to get to us. So yeah. Anyone who talked to me in the last month is going to just be oh, not again, because
that's amazing.
That's pretty funny.
That is great. I had a God week this week that was kind of funny. So I have one of those Ulocks for my bike, and then it's got these little rubber washers so that the bar that you put on top of it, it won't rub on the metal or whatever. Anyways, and I just noticed this week that one of them was missing, one of these little rubber pieces, and I was kind of sad because I'm oh, this is kind of a new lock, and now the metal's gonna get all scratched and it's gonna be uneven, and I was just but literally it's such a small thing, it doesn't matter, whatever, So anyways, a few days of this, and every time I put my bike lock on, I'd be oh, and I don't even know how I lost it, how am I so careless, and whatever. Anyways, the other day I was unlocking my bike at school, and I my foot kicked something on the ground, and I looked down, and it's one of these little rubber washers, and I was oh, I didn't even remember it being there, but there it was, and I was able to put it back on, and I felt it was the Lord being because one of the things that I've been afraid of lately is thinking about just my security and depending on God and trusting him, and for like just like basic like concrete stuff like finances and all that kind of stuff. I felt like the Lord was like, see, like I provide for you in this thing that doesn't even matter. Like, don't you think I'm going to provide for you even more, you know?
Yeah.
And then the kicker was that the next day I was unlocking my bike at another place and I foot kicked something again, and it was another one, like which is not from my bike, but I'm like, and it's like this, like the God is like the extravagance of God now. He's just giving me all these little rubber washers.
That's so funny.
Your cup runneth over with
oh my gosh,
rubber
and so I
washers.
kept that third one. I don't know what to do with it,
So
but I
great.
kept it because I'm like, this is a sign of God's love for me.
I love it.
That's funny. That's funny.
Right.
Okay, I did find the picture. There's the
good.
picture.
Oh, that's amazing.
So good.
That was the championship game. Okay.
It was,
so-
and Rachel
fair.
was horrified. It was okay. So I love that picture
Those
so
last few
much. I
minutes.
actually changed it to her contact image when she.
Dude, you're so.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay,
I
that's
love
okay.
it.
We have
I
to
love your
post that
passion.
quickly.
Yeah, totally.
It's beautiful.
It is
Rachel, you're
beautiful.
beautiful.
You are, even when you have a scowl on your face.
Yeah. I mean, it was a justified scowl. It was a point in the game, which I'm not going to talk about, where a pass, somebody fumbled a pass. We're just not going to talk about it. But it was a scowl that was worth it.
It caused you some suffering.
It did.
All right.
I love it.
Oh man. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. Thanks everyone for listening to us talk about fear.
Yeah. Hopefully you're not afraid.
Yeah,
You're
be not
more
afraid.
Be
like-
not afraid.
That's it. That's it. That's
Are we
what I
allowed
was-
to? Oh, there's a whole thing, right? Where you're not allowed to like sing hymns and songs and stuff that because of copyright. I just almost like launched into the one. You know, we all know that one from Mass. Anyone who's Catholic knows
Oh yeah.
the "Be Not Afraid" hymn that I'm
That's
thinking
right.
about right now.
I go before you always. Come follow me.
That's
that
right.
one.
Just instead think about John Paul II. Be not afraid.
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
I
That
think
was
he
a
said that.
very
Wasn't that
good
at Toronto
Paul.
World Youth Day?
Yes. I think he said it everywhere. Pretty much
probably all
everywhere.
the
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
That's right. Go YouTube it. Listen to it. Listen
Yeah.
to Pope John telling you not to be afraid.
That's right.
All right.
Sisters.
All right. See you
talk
guys
to you
next
later.
week.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless and see you next week.